January 1st carries a strange kind of pressure. It's quiet, but it's heavy. There's this unspoken idea that something is supposed to begin today, that whatever didn't change last year is meant to change now. For a lot of people, that idea doesn't feel motivating. It feels uncomfortable. Not because they don't want things to be different, but because they already know how difficult change actually is. Most people don't wake up on January 1st with new clarity. They wake up tired. The calendar flips, but nothing inside them has moved yet. The same thoughts are there, the same habits, the same unresolved things they were carrying a week ago. And that disconnect is important because real change rarely arrives on schedule. It doesn't respect dates, announcements, or symbolic resets. It tends to start much quieter than that. January 1st creates a sense of expectation, a feeling that something decisive should happen simply because time has advanced. But change doesn't usually work that way. Most meaningful shifts don't begin with action. They begin with discomfort that hasn't found language yet, with a vague sense that something isn't sustainable, even if no clear alternative exists. That kind of discomfort doesn't peak on holidays. It builds slowly, often unnoticed. People don't change when the calendar tells them to. They change when continuing starts to feel heavier than stopping. And that threshold rarely lines up neatly with January 1st. Another thing January 1st does is compress pressure into a single moment. It suggests that if change doesn't start now, it won't start at all. That framing makes hesitation feel like failure, but hesitation is often part of the process. Most people spend a long time circling change before they approach it directly. They test the idea quietly. They imagine alternatives. They pull back. They return to familiar routines. From the outside, that can look like avoidance. From the inside, it's often assessment. January 1st doesn't leave much room for that. It encourages declarations instead of observations, statements instead of questions. But real change usually starts with uncertainty, not certainty. People rarely know exactly what they're moving toward. They only know what they're starting to move away from. And that realization doesn't come with fireworks. It comes in ordinary moments, a repeated frustration, a pattern that no longer feels worth the effort, a quiet recognition that something isn't improving, no matter how much patience is applied. Those moments don't announce themselves. They don't wait for permission. They arrive when they arrive. January 1st also carries a kind of public performance. Even when no one is watching, people feel watched. There's a sense that intentions should be stated, goals should be named, progress should be visible. That makes change feel exposed before it's ready. Most people aren't prepared to act while they're still unsure. They need privacy for doubt, space to move slowly without explaining themselves. But January 1st turns change into something that's supposed to be immediate and observable. That pressure alone is enough to stall it, because starting before you're ready often means stopping quickly. There's also the problem of identity. Change doesn't just alter behavior, it alters how people see themselves. And identity doesn't shift cleanly on command. People can decide to act differently long before they feel like someone who lives differently. January 1st asks people to skip that middle part, to act as if the identity shift has already happened. For some, that works briefly. For most, it doesn't last. Because when the old identity resurfaces, as it always does, the gap feels discouraging. The effort feels artificial. and eventually things slide back to where they were. Not because change was impossible, but because it was forced too early. What actually starts change for most people is contrast, a moment when the cost of staying becomes clear, not abstractly, but personally, when repetition stops feeling neutral and starts feeling heavy. That moment doesn't arrive with a date attached. It might come in February or June or in the middle of an ordinary week with nothing special about it. It often arrives quietly, almost anticlimactically. And that's why it works, because it's grounded in experience, not expectation. Another reason January 1st fails as a starting point is that it assumes clarity comes first. But clarity often comes after movement begins. People don't usually change because they're sure. They change because they're no longer willing to keep repeating the same thing. They don't know exactly what comes next. They just know they don't want to keep going the same way. That kind of movement is tentative. It includes pauses, reversals, second guesses. January 1st doesn't leave room for that. It frames change as decisive and linear, but real change is usually uneven. It starts, stalls, resumes, and sometimes changes shape entirely. From the outside, it can look messy. From the inside, it feels cautious. That caution isn't weakness, it's calibration. Most durable change is built slowly enough to be absorbed. It has to integrate into someone's life, not just interrupt it. And that integration takes time. Another thing worth noticing is how much January 1st is about narrative. It offers a clean story. Old year ends, new one begins. But most lives don't operate on clean transitions. They overlap. They carry momentum forward. They resist sharp boundaries. Change that lasts usually grows out of existing conditions. It modifies routines rather than replacing them all at once. It reshapes priorities instead of discarding them overnight. That kind of change doesn't feel dramatic. It feels almost invisible while it's happening, which is why people often don't recognize it until later. Looking back, they notice that something shifted months ago, not on January 1st, on some ordinary day, when the old way finally felt heavier than the effort to try something else. That's usually when change actually begins, not when it's announced, but when it's quietly chosen, without witnesses, without certainty, without the need to make it meaningful to anyone else. January 1st promises transformation, but real change tends to arrive without promises at all, just a slow rebalancing, a gradual redirection, a decision that doesn't feel inspiring, just necessary. And those are often the changes that last.